As you remember, when we were collecting everything, my last step was to actually import a lot of the materials to one single planet, Toll 2. And I pointed out there were multiple launch pads. Let's take a look at the reason why there were multiple launch pads. So first let's look at the planets. Now, this is my manufacturing planet. As you can see, it's manufacturing coolant, mechanical parts, rich uranium, and it's got no extraction. Here we're extracting noble gas and plankton. This is our planet we've set up. And here's the other planets. As you can see, aqueous and ionic, making water and electrolytes. Same with the next one. As you can see, got a lot built up. This one's extracting base and noble. This one's extracting heavy and noble. Now, let's have a look at this one. If you remember, TAR 6 was the first one we looked at. And here we go. So, looks like relatively standard. Command center, storage, T1, 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 T1. But if you look at each T1, this is producing water. This is also producing water. This is electrolytes. This is electrolytes. No T2. In fact, there's just 2 T1s for each raw resource. This does mean that your extractors have to average 12,000 per hour. But as it's been over extracting, as you can see, it's got a fair amount of backlog built up. So even if the extractors go offline, my T1s are still going to feed off something. And as the T1s are the end of the production chain on this planet, each of them has an output through to my launch pad. And it's the same with the rest. That's specifically focused on 2 particular T1 outputs to feed into here, my manufacturing planet. As you can see, launch pad, launch pad, launch pad, storage, storage, storage. We've got a T2 and a T2 attached to this storage, T2 and a T2 attached to this storage, this one, this one, this one, and this one attached to this storage. So it doubles up on the amount of T2 products I'm creating per hour. And as I said, you need to make sure that you're doubling up on the amount of extracted materials you're sending through to feed 2 T1s to feed 2 T2s. So if we have a look at our storage here, as you can see, we've got our mechanical parts which have been made. And here's our imported materials. Now I know that this one, this storage, is feeding these 2, which are my mechanical parts. So I need to get these materials through to here to feed these 2. So expedited transfer to there. As you can see, 5-minute cooldown. But if I add precious and reactive there, suddenly it's a 44-minute cooldown, which is quite long. We'll execute that. This is the reason why I have 3 launch pads and 3 separate storage facilities, so that I can transfer from each launch pad to each storage facility without having to worry about the cooldown. I could send it all into one storage facility, but I've got the CPU and the power grid, as you can see, way more than I need. That it's not really too much of a bother for me. I'm not starved for power, I'm not starved for CPU. And it means I can keep everything nice and separate, so that if the mechanical parts starve and the two T2s go into stall, it means that as long as I've got resources in their storage here, my enriched uranium T2s are not going to stop producing. So we'll get the other ones put around. Bang, expedited. That's going to there. We're now at 2.5 hours or more of cooldown. And if I had them all in one launch pad going to multiple, yes, that would be a problem. And our final one, precious, toxic, add almost 2 hours now, and expedite. So we've got these going in. Occasionally you may want to rebalance your planets. For example, I may want to rebalance to get more precious than toxic, just to try and balance things out. But this is now in production. Here, they're relatively well balanced, so that planet's pretty good, and as you can see, everything started up. Here, way more water, so I may want to rebalance one or both of the planets that provide these T1 materials to focus more on electrolytes for a little while, just to try and get things balanced so that it more or less matches. But as you can see, it's all in production now. This is just one example of how a multi-planetary supply chain can be set up. Multiple planets creating multiple T1s and only T1s, which then get sent directly through to the launch pad, since the T1 is the end of the production chain for that planet. You then export from your T1 planets, import it all into the T2 planet, and have it all feeding. Because as you notice, there are no extractors here. This is just purely manufacturing, nothing else. So we'll exit that. And so that's now all just going to happily mutter along. Everything's up and running. Nothing's complaining about facilities needing attention. And for the most part, they've got a reasonable backlog, so even if the extractors run out of program, the T1s, T2s are not going to immediately stop. Because as you remember, you're going from, go back to our planet, you're going from extractor to storage. Storage to T1, back to storage. Storage to T2, and then out to Launchpad, as that is the final step in the process. We've got no reason to send T2 back to storage and then have to expedite transfers across through to our Launchpad. Because remember, Launchpad is also a storage. We'll exit out of that. So that is one possible way to set up a multi-planetary supply chain. Customize your planets to produce one or two resources need to feed into another. So if we look at go back to our toll 2, we've got two T1s that we need, or extracted noble gas and plankton colonies. And this is where the skill interplanetary consolidation. Remember, you get one planet for free, all the other planets cost. So you could go interplanetary consolidation 3, have one planet just purely on plankton colonies. Just focus on that. The second planet, just purely on oxygen. Just that's all it focuses on. And with the T1 being the last step in the chain, sends it all through to your launch pad, and then you just collect the launch pad output, bring it to your third planet. This is why you need interplanetary 2 at the very least. Input it all in there and feed more than one T2. Feed multiple. Just remember, for every T1 for a particular extracted resource, you ideally want 6,000 units per hour. So if you've got 2, you're going to want 12,000 units per hour. 4, you're going to want to make sure across all your extractors you're getting a total of 24,000 per hour. This is pretty much the only way to really boost your T1, T2 output, is just to have more T1 and T2 facilities. Now, if we go back to our planet, remember this whole setup just requires Command Center upgrade 3. That's all, just 3. Because you get that one for free. Command Center upgrade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as pretty much we have the entire manufacturing complex all set up, once you go to 4 or 5, where that would mainly get used is more extractor heads. Maybe an additional T1 to help feed into your T2. Really, the sky is sort of the limit. Well, outside of your power grid, that's going to be your absolute limit as to what you can actually put on a planet. But, that being said, you can get creative in how you actually manage it. Because this just took 3. This, as you can see, is fully upgraded, but I've got way more power grid and CPU than I need. So technically I could throw some more T2s down there. Maybe throw a T3 or more. But at this point, the reason why this is set up as it is because these 3 T2s, mechanical parts, coolant, and enriched uranium, are all feeding back into my main with covering bottlenecks and shortfalls in the supply chain for what they're doing. So this is an example of where you can help your corp. If they need, for example, a lot more enriched uranium or coolant or anything, you can then customize your planets. If you've got the interplanetary consolidation, more than one planet to maximize your output of a particular product. And once that's maximized, it helps the entire supply chain that goes above it. So if you can provide bulk quantities of T2 to feed into their T3, T4 and above, then it smooths out how much of anything above that particular component they can actually make at one particular point in time. I hope that just gives you a little idea on how you can actually set up your planets. You're not limited to just one planet, self-contained, a thing unto itself, doing everything from extraction through to the ultimate product you want. Remember though, you do have your import duties and you do have your export duties. So that will shave a little off the top due to transferring things around between planets. And you may find that Nereus may not cut it unless you start stuffing it full of expanded cargo holds. So if you start getting into multiple planets, you're probably going to want to get something like an epithel or a much larger hauler, so you can haul things around with a lot less pain or going backwards and forwards between your planet, station, which it's can be quite boring enough just going around and collecting at once. Imagine having to go to Tar, then back to station, then Kemek, then back to station. Yeah, that would not exactly be the most fun way to actually spend your time. Now, as I don't need this planet, this is just purely to actually show you what can be done. What I'll be showing next is how I prefer to decommission a planet with minimal loss. Just so any excess resources, anything in production, finishes and gives me more resources in my hangar in case I want to set that one up again, or just sell it off and free up the planet. As I don't need another planet up and running, I won't be doing that now, but I will be decommissioning at some point, and I'll show you my preferred way to actually decommission a planet. Decommissioning basically is decommissioning everything here with the command center being last. The moment you remove that command center, the planet is abandoned. Once you abandon the planet, you free it up for something else. So don't think once you've set up your planet, you're wedded to it, that it's going to be there forever and you can't do anything or you're just going to lose everything. There is a way you can decommission it in a way that preserves as much of that as possible, and even if you don't need them, you can probably sell them off on the market just to get a little bit of extra to cover the costs of the initial setup, such as your skill books, building your facilities, extractors, and so on, outside of your actual manufactured product, your T2. With that, all that being said, I hope you can see how things can actually get fit together and how it can actually merge into your T3. So you're going to have two planets specifically making T2 products to feed into a third planet, which is making two specific Tier 2 products which then feed into making a tier 3 product and beyond. All it comes down to is your creativity on how you want to actually string everything together. And of course, where your skills are at. And to maximize what you're extracting from a planet to feed in, you want planetology to get to 5, and then you want advanced planetology, which will help you locate the best resource nodes or concentrations on a planet to maximize your extractors and to meet or exceed by a lot, exceed preferably, that 6,000 units per T1 facility you have on a planet. And with that said, I think we have covered pretty much most of the basics, giving you an idea on how PI actually works, where the skills actually come into things, what skills you probably want to look at first. So if you're on our one planet, you want your command center upgrades. Then you want to look at your planetology skills, possibly even branch out further once that's done to your advanced. Remote sensing, as I said, you can get away with level 3. Still gives you a pretty long range of viewing. And finally, interplanetary consolidation for when you want to start branching out into more planets. Have a good day.